All right, welcome to the Devhouse Agency podcast, your window into the metaverse. I am Jim Welch, your host, and today with me, your co-host, is Eric Peterson.
Hello.
So we have a fun episode today. We are going to be kind of loosely talking about everything that kind of coalesces into a singular idea. We have Tony Chido as our guest today, and you'll see as we talk with him about sort of how him and his organization sort of tie into it as well. And so let's dive right into in the news. All right, so recently, and this is sort of I feel like a tie on to Travis Scott, Ariana Grande doing the kind of Fort Worth. I'm in Texas, so Fort Worth,
Fortnite.
Fortnite concerts is the Justin Bieber recently did a concert,
We
right?
did. Yeah, I think it was Friday night,
Yeah, so
Thursday.
just very, very recently.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. And so it was interesting because it wasn't in Fortnite, it wasn't in a game engine. And so it was taking that same idea, but a little bit of a new departure. And so I think definitely newsworthy. And so I kind of wanted to chat about that. I know that I think it was what YouTube released.
Yep, YouTube
Mhm.
on the Wave site as well. They partnered Justin Bieber and Wave to
Right.
deliver this performance. And
And I think they even showed it. I remember seeing a screenshot of it like in Times Square, and so there's definitely promotion behind it, and a pretty cool thing. And for anyone who isn't familiar with what these things are, I'm sure they go in different degrees of involvement from the artist. But in this particular one, and I think we might even have a clip from it that we can put in the link in the thing, and we can even pull up on our screen here. But I'm fairly certain that there was a full mocap suit. Do we have that, Shay, that we can reference here?
yeah,
Yeah.
so here it is for those listening. We're presented this virtual environment, and Justin Bieber is performing for his virtual fans. So 328, pretty believable or realistic representation. They're in the street. There's people dancing, and Bieber appears on top of looks like a Lincoln Continental.
That's very, your cars, I guess. I was like,
Yeah,
he's on a car. I
it's
don't know.
cool looking.
Yeah, there's what's cool about virtual concerts is like the effects, right? So as Eric and I are watching this, it's we see a bunch of particle effects and sparkly things. For those, I guess particle effects is how I describe things as a developer. But yeah,
So there's also a little window on the little small right corner window of him in his mocap suit.
right. Yep. And so if people who aren't familiar with what a mocap suit is, if you've ever seen someone in like a black leotard with those like little white ping pong balls on them, that's sort of the go-to mocap design, and it's to track the body, right? So you're in a space, and we can turn down Bieber so I can not fight with him over voice.
Yep.
Thanks, Shay. I'm very distracted by his vocals. So the little dots help identify where the body is. So when it's moving, that contrast of the white against the black really helps identify where the body is, and then they can use that information to sort of attach that data to the virtual version of the artist, right? So.
Yep.
So yeah, very cool. We can see there's like little emotes coming from the audience, which is pretty neat. I don't know. I'm not familiar with how much of that. It's looking like it's actual users based on the username. So there's some interaction, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it
Um,
was a big live event that happened in real time. So I think a lot of people were really excited about it. Gets a lot of exposure, not just to the artist, but to the technology. And I think it's going to get a lot of buzz going, and hopefully generate some interest.
yeah. Well, I have some ideas that I want to talk about when we bring our guest on here. But yeah, I wanted to kind of show that it's a big artist. Obviously he has a lot of visibility, and so
Sure.
him doing something in this space is, again, it's with Facebook, it's with Microsoft, Justin Bieber. People are saying this is the future, this is coming. So it's always great to see people sort of joining in on that. Awesome. Well, let's talk about some gear that is also very closely tied to this. So let's check out some gear. All right. So the gear today is the IPI. It's software more than it's any hardware. So kind of a deviation from what I would consider our normal gear topic. But it is to help with motion capture, and so it's the software that we use here at Devhouse to do this type of work. There's a plethora of different options for motion capture. And what we saw Justin in earlier, that was one particular provider, and it had the sort of golf or the ping pong ball type suit, the motion capture suit. What's cool about iPi is it doesn't require that.
Right.
Can we pull up that site, and we'll make sure we put it in the links as well. That the IPI software, what's really neat about it and what drew our attention is it can work with just standard webcams.
Yep.
Right? So you don't have to have some sort of fancy hardware. Basically takes an array or a bunch of webcams. I think we use 6 in our setup. And then it determines, based on the information shared between those cameras, where you are. And so it can identify your skeleton, your sort of digital skeleton, based off that information. It's very cool. You can use Connect cameras. Just a couple Connect cameras will work, or depth cameras, which the Connects are basically really fancy depth cameras, but they're hard to find now because they aren't produced anymore. Or you can use regular webcams, the kind of typical Logitech webcams everyone has now.
Sure. Yep. Which
Yeah.
is how we implemented it. We're working on some video games. It was very helpful for some very unique animations we wanted to implement.
Right. Yeah. We found a lot of our work, we're doing animation work that, we can hand animate, but it's challenging.
Right.
It's very time consuming. Even just a walk cycle, someone just walking across the ground believably
Yep.
takes a lot of time to animate. And so if you have a motion capture room like we have now here over at the Devhouse, we can just go walk and then it's there. Now there is cleanup. So anyone who's not familiar with the process, there is a lot of sort of cleanup, and you have to take that data, and it's never perfect. Another example of that is the hands aren't tracked in our current setup, and so they're always either in fists or open, and so you have to go through and hand animate the
Sure.
hands.
Yep.
Though that is something that technology can resolve, and there's gloves that you can get, and so we're looking into that when we need more hand specific work.
Yeah, it's the degree of realism you want to achieve, right? In some
Yeah.
cases, it's fine, and other times you want to go for that super realism.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, the more data there is, the more time it takes to clean it up. So
Sure.
if you're getting a bunch of data like individual finger movement, but you don't really need that data, there's no point in capturing it.
Makes sense.
So yeah. So this is a really cool piece of software. They have, I believe, a free entry level version. It is pretty technical. So if you're another studio or a developer, very highly recommended. For kind of an end client or more just a creative agency, I would definitely recommend partnering with a dev studio or purchasing one of the like full on mocap suits. Those tend to be a little more user friendly. They'll come with software. This one is a little bit more dev focused. So awesome. Okay, well, that is
Very
our
cool.
gear for today. I'll let you introduce our dev abomination for the week,
Yeah, our
Eric.
Dev Abomination. It took a few minutes to kind of comb through the ideas we had for this week. So we're developing a video game here. It's our own intellectual property. It's called Lost in Paracosm. We were really excited to present it at Retropalooza, a
Mhm.
local video game conference. Um, and we did get some good assets, some good audio, some good animation. In our rush to develop it, we did kind of stumble across a need where we had to place a placeholder for an asset audio file. That would be specifically for this case a dog barking.
Right.
So we didn't really have any dog that we could, on command, put a microphone up to their mouth and have them bark on command. So we just used one of our developers' vocal barks. So if we play, you'll probably be able to hear it. For context, we have our character walking around a backyard, and there's a dog that's visibly barking,
Bark, bark, bark.
but he
bark,
sounds like that.
Bark, 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 bark.
So we thought it was a fun little, cute little thing, made us laugh.
Bark, bark.
Yeah,
bark,
the
bark.
concept of placeholders is used everywhere, right? So you don't want to have the implementation team, the people implementing the sounds, to wait and just so they're putting the dog in, they're making everything work, and then just stop and have to come back to it when sound is delivered. So they make the whole system, they make it play the sound file, and then when Shay or somebody creates a sound effect file, they can just drop it in, and
Yeah.
it's super quick. But if they don't put the placeholder, they don't know if the logic works. So it may never play the sound. And so it's a frequent thing done. And this is a fun example of how that, can it's not so much. This one's more of a dev cute abomination.
Sure,
It's
yeah,
less
it wasn't a
weird.
bad thing unless
Yeah.
you forget to remove it and
Yes,
replace it. But
that's
yeah, it wasn't a
true.
huge error. It was just kind of a fun thing that happens when you're moving fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Cool. Well, awesome. Well, I want to kind of jump into bringing our guest in and bring Tony Chido in, and so he's going to be joining us here and talking a bit about himself. So why don't we pull him up here, Shay? And hey, Tony, how's it going?
I'm doing great, Jim. How are you and Eric doing today?
Doing wonderful. We're it's interesting shooting a podcast during our normal office hours because we're doing business and doing meetings and software developing and then running into the other room to shoot a podcast. So it's fun. Keeps us on our toes.
It's funny that you mentioned the dog barking because uh, my dog goes eight shades of the color crazy whenever anything passes by the front door. And
Yeah.
she is currently out of town, right? I won't see her until like Thanksgiving because we had to basically board her while I was out in California for a race. And so this is probably like the most quiet environment that I've had to work in a very, very long time.
Did it
That's great.
did it bark
Yeah.
like a human bark?
All right. Just like
Well,
that.
the cool thing is so this little dog, she's only 27 pounds, and she's a cross between a border collie and a cocker spaniel, and
Mm,
she can jump pretty much up to like my nose height from all fours, just flat. She's an amazingly aggressive, player and play catch and all that stuff too. And she definitely loves people, so she makes her presence known.
yeah.
Yep.
We have a little office dog here named Kimchi, and he similarly when people walk by, he likes to bark. So in hindsight, we should have
There
just
he's
recorded
Kimchi.
Kimchi.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So well, tell us a bit. I didn't give you an intro. I thought it'd be better if you spoke to what you do, who you are. So I guess let people know what you do and who you are.
Sure. So my name's Peter Anthony Chido. Everybody knows me as Tony. I go by the short of my middle name. That whole Peter Tony, what is your name thing has caused great confusion for years. It's actually the running joke in the last several places that I've been involved with. So just to set the record straight, like, I'm Tony. I'm not schizophrenic. There's not two of us. There's only one. Uh, I've spent the better part of about 32 years in the games and the entertainment industry. The last couple years, I've also been involved with some fintech work as well as some ed tech work as well. And actually, just recently, within the last couple of weeks, I went back full time into games and entertainment, and I'm working for an amazing place that's called Future House Studios. That's based out in Salt Lake City, Utah. Here, and I want to talk to you a little bit about that because I think it's a group that everybody should get to know, and I would love to speak with anybody offline who basically wants to know more about our company. But we've assembled a team of incredible artists and technical directors from top film, game, VR studios, and I'm talking groups that include, but are certainly not limited to, the likes of ILM, Weta, Disney, Pixar, Microsoft, Activision, Blizzard, Electronic Arts, Digital Domain, Within, and more. One thing that's really cool is one of the guys on our team is actually the animator who's responsible for designing how all the Transformers transform in the different Michael Bay
That's
Transformers
cool.
movies the last several years. And that always brings like a lot of smiles on people's faces. And so that's a story that never grows old, being able to tell that. But our team has vast experience creating blockbuster movies, AAA games, and premier VR and AR experiences, television series, and commercials. They're absolute experts at developing content. The other thing I want to note is that we have a sibling company that's called Future House Studios. Sorry, Future House Publishing, actually, that develops stories for television and for film. So I'm very honored to be a part of that team, and it's been a great past couple of weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we've partnered with Future House on some projects and they're a great team and definitely highly recommended. And that's obviously why we have Tony on because we like them. They're good
Hmm.
folks.
And I love working with you too. Like I've worked with Jim, just so everybody knows, off and on for like the last several years. We've done everything from music and sound composition for games and audio scoping and much more robust stuff than that too. So Jim's kind of a go-to guy for me for a lot of different projects over the years.
Yeah, yeah, we met. I don't even know how many years ago it was, but I started my kind of creative career as a composer and sound designer, and so I was at don't know if I was still at Funimation at the time, but I was doing music composition and sound design for Funimation. And one of the voice actors there, if anyone follows anime, is Chris Sabat. He does, Vegeta and Piccolo and a whole bunch of, Major Armstrong from Full Metal. And so, I got to know him through my work, and we did some fun stuff together. And he's like, "Hey, there's this guy I know. There's this project. What do you think about working on it?" And so that was how Tony and I met. From me as a audio artist. And so it's interesting now. We're at the time. Tony was producing this game, and I was doing music, and now we're like in totally different roles, but still working together, which is fun.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So
It goes to show you how important relationships are, right? Because if every single time you did a project, if you had to start over with brand new people, you'd be spending so many cycles starting over, right? It doesn't make any sense. So being able to kind of build on successes and learning from things that went great, or things to improve upon, makes for a really healthy process.
right,
Yep,
absolutely.
agreed.
So the topic specifically we wanted to kind of talk about today is something that we know Future House does a lot of. We do a bit of it as well, as we're trying to get into it, and leveraging your studio's experience for that. Is basically virtual experiences or virtual conferences, virtual concerts. The idea of this sort of thing that we're used to doing in person, concerts, meetings, etc. Well, now they're can be done virtually,
Yep.
and I think the pandemic was a catalyst for this, and we discovered, oh, initially we need this because we don't want to be in the same space for health reasons, and then maybe it's like, oh, well, actually there's all these other benefits as well.
Sure.
And so I guess I want to give you a chance, Eric, to talk about how do you see the benefits of these virtual transitioning real kind of group experiences into a virtual equivalent.
Yeah, well, I think, we're all battling Zoom fatigue, right? It's unfortunately right now, we're meeting Tony online, and that's fantastic. But to have a spatial understanding is such a more believable, natural experience, right?
Right.
It's kind of trying to get that facsimile of what a real life conference or a meeting would be. And like you said, I think the pandemic just really accelerated the need for all these technologies and trying to collaborate cross geographical constraints. And yeah, I would love to hear Tony's experience and how he solved some of these challenges for his clients or his projects.
Sure. So one of our clients is a fintech company named MX, and they came to us and they said, we want to do a corporate meeting that is obviously inclusive of a keynote. But because of the pandemic, obviously we are working remote. We're not all in the same place. Like, what can we do there? And so we came up with a full virtual environment that enabled up to 500 concurrent users to actually sit and participate in the viewing of a keynote. And in addition to that, we wanted to make sure that there were different ways that different members within the MX team actually could get together and they could interact. And so we integrated different kinds of mini games and other
Mm.
kinds of activities so that people could actually kind of have more of an active experience as opposed to something that was just 100% passive. One of the things that was really cool about this is, of course, we were a part of the event and we were kind of behind the scenes, helping with some things as it was running. But we actually found that for several hours after the keynote had wrapped, there were still quite a few people from the company that were still in the virtual environment that were interacting. And I think that speaks volumes to the importance of being able to have that. I always call it like team gel and that kind of interaction to really promote like a positive, fun type of company culture. And there's ways to do that, even though we are definitely in a new environment that involves working remotely. So that's a great example of kind of how we used some virtual experience tech. There's some other things that we're working on at Future House right now that I'm really excited about that I can't necessarily disclose just yet, but I think they're going to leave just as significant a mark for these additional groups with whom we're working.
Right. I
Awesome.
I love that you talked about the gamification inside the experiences. So we're currently doing sort of a pilot of a similar type experience of like how do you do a keynote through virtual space, and by kind of scoping out the different features. The idea of gamification is great because, to your point, people stayed around in that space, sort of proving that what you built and what your team built, it was a place they wanted to be. And if
Right.
if you can do that, then not only is it sort of meet the minimum requirements of the keynote, and okay, yeah, we want people to be there and not be groaning or uncomfortable, but now they actually want to go, which maybe wouldn't necessarily be the case even in a live scenario, because what can you do other than sit in a chair? It's like, oh well, now you can have some more fun and interactions that don't distract other viewers, because it's maybe just only viewable to you. And uh, the digital integration just provides so much more options. And so I think our biggest challenge as creators is, how do we make it um, feel good? It's almost like the doctors, first do no harm, right? The Hippocratic oath.
Yep.
It's like, first feel good.
Yeah,
it's
right.
like it's
Get
like, don't make the
comfortable.
headset hurt. Yeah, be comfortable. Yeah, don't be in an uncomfortable piece of hardware, a heavy headset. So that's Oculus's job to try to help solve, and a bunch of other companies who obviously are building headsets as well. And then us as creators, we're past the point now of some obvious stuff like, oh, don't make the horizon move, it makes you feel nauseous, and some of these things we had to learn in the early days of VR. But now I think we're still very much learning, when you're in a fully immersive experience, how do we make that comfortable? How do we make people enjoy being inside of that place for an extended period of
And
time?
easy to navigate, easy to understand, where am I in relation to this person and how do I interact with the platform to engage. And to your point, yeah, more of an engaging active experience than a passive one, because I'm
Yeah.
sure we've all been in, Zoom calls where we're not engaging, and it's, you can kind of check out and check out other
Right.
browser tabs because the content doesn't relate to you, and there's probably a lot of wasted opportunity there.
Yeah.
I I think it's a important thing to kind of take into account too, that I think we need to be very solid in terms of how we can present a sense of choice to users. But I think we also need to talk about basically like, here's the experience do you get in an extremely small period of time, like what you were supposed to do or what you can do, so it's not overwhelming, right?
Right.
I think if we give too much choice and there's too much freedom, there might be some people that basically say, hey, I work great with freedom, but then reality is they don't. They want to have a little bit of guidance, and so you have to balance things between let people explore, but at the same time, it's like have just enough of a touch point or some guardrails there, so people kind of understand like here's the area in which I can play, which I think speaks to the gamification comment that you made, Jim. Right?
Sure. Yeah. No, absolutely. And finding that balance of, if you let people have a really in-depth game, they might just go play basketball where you're trying to give your keynote speech. So
Yeah.
Right?
you have to balance it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's the benefits of kind of growing, putting this in a digital space. You can do all sorts of fun things. You can make play. You can do a lot of beneficial improvements, but also just logistically, especially with COVID, but even past, sending everyone to a conference, sending everyone to a keynote speech, is expensive. We go to GDC as our sort of yearly conference, as a game developers conference, and AWE just happened a couple weeks ago, AWE, and these get expensive. And so if these can all be eventually supplemented, or even maybe hypothetically replaced by a virtual version of that, it can save companies a lot of money, and also good for the environment. Less people flying around.
Sure.
The only sort of downside I see is maybe in tourism. Maybe the cities might not get as much income from people at the restaurants and whatnot by the convention
And
centers.
it could be a blend of both, right? There could be people who actually physically attend and another package for virtual attendees, which a lot of offer anyway. But no,
Sure.
that's fantastic. Are there any other applications for this that you can speak on legally right now? Or
So I will say, so we've actually been pretty heavily involved with some virtual concerts, and so it was kind of neat to see what you guys led with, right? So Future House is a third-party outsourced group for Wave. So we have been involved with the Justin Bieber concert you talked about. We also did some stuff with John Legend and The Weekend. there's a project that I'm personally working on that has not been announced yet that I am extremely excited about that we'll be able to chat more about here in the next hopefully like week or so, right? Which is really really exciting. But I think that's another example of how you can have a virtual experience that provides something that's really unique and really compelling outside of kind of what we knew the world to be like 18 months ago or like a year ago, right? And
Right.
there's some other things that are being explored that I think are going to help to further increase that as well.
Yeah, well, it's an exciting time because we're discovering this stuff.
Yep.
So we know Travis Scott did really really well with his performance, and I forget the number of millions of people that got to experience that. My son played Fortnite at
Mhm.
that time, and I remember hopping into it with him, and I think it might have been his. I can't recall if he was able to do it twice, but either way, we went in together, and it was really neat because while he was performing, suddenly he grew to the size of like a giant, and then
Right.
suddenly now the gravity was off, which normally the game doesn't have that. So now you're like floating and jumping really high, and so you're getting all these like things you can sort of do. I maybe I'm getting old, but when I go to a concert, sometimes I'm like, this is great, but I'm kind of tired, or like, but it keeps you engaged because there's these little interactives that you can do. And so obviously that went really well. Recently Ariana Grande, which we mentioned earlier, followed suit. There was a few other artists who did a more 2D experience inside of a 3D
Yep.
space.
I think that's popular in Decentraland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's like a good way for companies maybe to dip their toes in. It's like, hey, we want to be in a spatial environment, but we don't necessarily want to go to the budget to get, a 3D character created, to rig that character, to motion capture. And so I think there's different levels companies can get engaged for these types of things.
And to be honest with you, that's an area where Future House can help out any company that's looking to do that because we specialize in doing both 2D and 3D animation work. We also have some experience doing virtual experiences that are on the location based entertainment side, as well as like augmented and virtual reality stuff that's both for mobile experiences as well as, again, things like the location based stuff. And I have to tell you, speaking to that, something that's really, really impressed me within the last week, and this is not something that, say, Future House had involvement with, but I had the opportunity last week to go to Disney's California Adventure and go to the new Marvel campus. And there is a ride there that's the Web Slinger ride featuring Spider-Man. They do some amazing stuff in their cars where basically how you're moving your hands like this, you're shooting webs and taking out targets. And it was so amazing to me because everybody that was with me in the car was interacting in their own way. It's like having this little miniature like motion capture stuff that's basically targeted just you from like the waist up. And then as if it couldn't get any cooler, it does because Disney will sell these little attachments that can go on your wrist, which for lack of a better phrase, they're really kind of role-playing toys that you could actually bring back so the kids can, play superhero stuff at home. But when you put those on and actually you're engaged with the ride, they actually give you power-up elements. So there are things
Oh,
like
that's neat.
Very
shoot out
cool.
like triple webs and all these things. And so it was such an awesome experience to see that because a lot of times you may participate in a ride where it's kind of more of a passive thing where you're watching things as you're kind of moving around, but this is one where you kind of have this sense of I'm engaging with things around me and I'm having a great experience, and it's kind of a interesting way to say I've got like an in-app kind of purchase with these toys, right?
Right.
It's kind of like an upgrade, but then you feel good about buying them because it's not just a one and done when you leave the park. You can use them and have some fun with it on the kids side when you actually get home.
Yeah.
So I think if anybody has a chance, I cannot stress enough what a great experience it was to go check out the new Marvel campus that Disney has at the California Adventure Park.
That's awesome. That sounds really cool. I
Very
haven't had
cool.
a chance to see it myself, but the way you describe it, it sort of showcases, I think, what will be more comfortable for companies to get into this sort of spatial metaverse world. They've already invested in physical products and experiences, and so they may not want to suddenly 180 to all digital, but you can integrate the two in
Sure.
really interesting ways. And then maybe you eventually switch to digital, or maybe not. Maybe they both exist in perpetuity. But it's a good way to sort of supplement and sort of kind of upsell an experience. It's like, hey, you already bought the ride, but what if you get these attachments? It makes the ride even better,
Right.
which video games have been doing for years. This is a very standard type of business model for video games. So we can now
Yeah.
bring that to the real world, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and you've heard this in other thought leaders when they're explaining the entertainment and gaming. That'll be a line that's just kind of slowly blurred, right?
Yeah.
It's just all kind of be interesting ways to deliver content, whether it's a gamified entertainment or an entertaining game. But yeah, all these different interactions. It's really the sky's the limit to the creative imagination of some of these creators.
Right. Well, let's we have our 5 questions, and I want to give Tony a chance to answer those. So
Okay.
I'm gonna let you lead, Eric. I feel like I've hogged the mic today.
Yeah,
So
you're
You
good.
guys are making me nervous. I don't know what to expect.
Okay. Well, do your best, just be as vague as possible or whatever pops into your head. We won't hold you to it, but in your best estimation, what is the metaverse to you currently? What does that
Um,
mean?
so for me, it's being able to take my real world experiences and having those expanded so that I can basically get like a greater point of view about things, right? And I know I'm being very cryptic here, but it's this sense of I am investing in self, and through that investment of self, I can now experience things or do things that I might not otherwise be able to do, right? And that could be a lot of things to a lot of people. And I think that's okay, just because we are literally in the infancy of trying to figure out like what it is. I'll say I want to make sure though that everybody kind of understands my comment there is we need to be very responsible with how we present choice, just so people don't feel overwhelmed, because I think that could absolutely kill the experience. I think we need to be very solid in terms of here's the couple things you can do and invite people to explore so we can build the comfort. I think if we just drop people into basically, a sandbox, I think we could lose some people, which would be unfortunate.
Absolutely.
No, great point. Would you like to
No,
go
I'm gonna
to?
let you lead the whole
All
thing.
right,
I've
I
been
got it.
chatty today.
No, you're fine. So number two, that's a great answer, by the way. And yeah, your
Thank
point
you.
your point is heard.
Thank-
What is the coolest tech that you'd expect to see in the next 5 years?
So I actually just, did my rave review of the web slingers right at the Marvel campus at California Adventure. So I'm actually gonna stick with that. I think it's great. I had the benefit this year of being able to go to both attractions at Disney World and at Disneyland, and it's been really neat to kind of see how all of the tech involving like theme parks has evolved, how VR has basically come in, how we've had like active experiences that maybe a few years ago were kind of more on the passives kind of side of things. And I'm really curious to see how things are going to evolve. And it's kind of a mix, right? Because the Hagrid's ride that is on the motorcycle that you see like in the Universal part with Harry Potter is great because of the speed, but yet, when you go to Cars Land, right, things like what you experience with the Radiator Springs, heavy duty ride, and then also the thing with like Luigi's dancing cars, which is the most fun, engaging thing I've done in a long time. Is such a nice offset against things like the Spider-Man web slinger that you don't feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again. And I think that's all coming because there's a lot of really solid imagination going into how we're using tech to make new experiences for people.
Sounds like we need a company trip to Disney World.
Yeah, I know. Well, Disney, yeah, boy,
I was
they're
trying to get my
the
son
standard.
to go, and he has no interest in any IPs. He watches YouTube streamers, and but like he doesn't care about Disney. He doesn't care about any of the properties like Star Wars. And I'm just like, come on, kid, like get into a store narrative.
Well, we all got our interests.
Yeah.
So number three would be what tech do you expect to fail in the next 5 years?
So I think wearables has been a really interesting area, right? So I like to run and I like to ski. And so it's always a little cumbersome for me to kind of figure out like how can I track my stats and do the kind of active things that I want to do without feeling like I am just covered in stuff. So I look at things like Google Glass, which was kind of obtrusive both for people looking at you as well as for you as a user. And then I see some of the things where people are wanting to explore like with wearables. I'd like to see wearables kind of turn that corner where everybody feels like it's more integrated into the experience as opposed to like, holy cow, look at all this stuff hanging off my body or filling out my pockets, right?
Yeah, yeah, and we have a future episode with somebody that is working on some wearable tech, and so it'll be really cool to hear more about what they're trying to do, and it's similar in hope to sort of integrate it more closely. So
Yeah.
that'll be fun.
And again, kind of echoes to your point of not giving people too many options and
Yeah,
overwhelming them with the opportunities.
sure.
So number four kind of relates to number two. So number two was what's the coolest tech you expect in the next 5 years? But currently, what's your favorite interactive experience? And you can go with your same answer.
So yeah, so let's flip it. So for your current one, you really like the sort of Spider-Man experience.
Yeah.
What is coming up? Like, what's a thing that doesn't exist yet that you think in the future you're like, I would love for this to exist?
I saw a commercial the other day for a toy, and it was a Jurassic Park themed toy, and it was a Velociraptor, so it's a bipedal figure that is working on remote control that was basically like running down a sidewalk. And I was absolutely blown away by that, not just because it looked so cool, but it's like I could totally see myself playing with that. And the fact that it was bipedal was amazing. If being a huge Star Wars fan, like I want a remote controlled AT-AT walker from the Empire Strikes Back that can walk on all fours and I can reenact the Battle of Hoth. I know what I'm saying is nerdy as can be, but that is a toy that I have wanted since I was 10 years old, right? So
Yeah.
let's hope that that is something that's like in the future that's coming.
Yeah, yeah, we got one of those BB-8 cars for my son, and or not a car, but rolly ball RC car.
Right.
It didn't work that well, unfortunately, but conceptually was very cool, and I think, yeah, maybe even some way of tying in tech and maybe if eventually spatial sort of hologram stuff is good enough, we won't have to solve the mechanical problem, but you'll feel like you can see it and it looks real. That would be extra neat.
I
And
would love something like the hologram thing is actually a great idea because there's a lot of things I could think of I would like to do with that that involve like running and skiing and a lot of
Yeah.
the stuff I like to do. That would
I
be cool.
I agree. I think that kind of stuff for outdoors sports would be really beneficial. Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
Grail. Yeah, if we can get there, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, my fault if I didn't explain the questions. It seems like maybe these are repetitive, but what interactive experience would you like to see? So I guess the question was, what coolest tech would you like to see? And this
Mm,
one would be, what kind of experience would you like to see?
So I'm
right.
gonna
Kind of
go.
synonymous.
It's okay. I'm kind of going back to my answer about when you said like, hey, what is the multiverse to you, right? I really want to see the tech evolve so that based on whether I'm doing a virtual, a digital activity or doing a physical activity, that those two can be somewhat integrated so I can really promote that sense of investment in self. So I can say, this is the best way for me to spend my time. And I think that works really well with what I said before too about choice, right? Because if I choose to want to excel in a certain kind of thing, if I recognize, hey, this is a weakness, and I either am going to steer clear of that because I'm just not very good at it, or it's like, I think I know what I need to do to get better, then I can proceed down that path, right? So those are the kinds of things at a very high level I would like to see somebody be able to solve.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Thank you.
Great answer. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, perfect. Well, that sort of wraps up our interview with Tony. Is there any how can people reach you if they want to reach out and talk about more Future House stuff? What's the best way to contact you?
So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So if you look up Peter Anthony Chido on LinkedIn, I would love to get a direct message. Also, if anybody, actually let's start with that. I think if someone wants to reach out with me there, then we can set up an appointment or we can actually have a discussion. I would love to see how we could help you on the Future House side with any of your projects or initiatives, given all the areas that we specialize in. Uh, Worst comes to worst, I've never been one to turn down a conversation. So if you just kind of want to chat and pick brains and do a meet and greet, I'm totally happy with that as well.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, I appreciate your time, Tony, and thanks for chatting with us.
Well, thank you for having me. Nice to see you guys.
Yes, good
Yeah,
to see you again. All
take
right.
care, Tony.
Take care.
Bye bye.
All right. So I think, the sort of themes for today was really focusing on the virtual concerts, the virtual
Keynote.
meetings,
Yeah.
keynotes, virtual conferences.
Yep.
You could sort of umbrella all of those as virtual experience. So sometimes that could be a bit of a misnomer because kind of everything's virtual if you're in a headset. But the idea of bringing a lot of people together into a virtual space to connect, whether it's with a performer or each other. And you get some of those today already. We brought up some of those in today's episode. There's also Microsoft that sort of dove in and said, "Hey, we're investing in taking their chat client Teams, which is like a Zoom or a Google Hangout competitor. They're saying, hey, we're going to have these 3D avatars, and so they're committing to that experience as well. And so really there's a huge opportunity for business and entertainment, right? So we want to sort of help teams, whether it's with Future House Studios, who we partner with a lot, or Devhouse Studios, and get the two of our studios being here for people to come to with these like, hey, yeah, we do an annual conference, or we have our company like our quarterly reviews, and they're really dry and people don't want to be there. It's like, okay, yeah, let's make it virtual, save you money, make the information more presentable, make it more fun.
Yeah.
So hopefully, we can have conversations with people in the future, more people in the future, and we can build more of these experiences and make them more commonplace moving forward.
Sure. Yeah. And to Tony's point, these experiences don't have to obey physics, gravity, size, scale. There's a gamified element to them that I think draws users in. It can present information in a more exciting way.
Yep.
So whether that's entertainment purposes or for distributing learning content to a large workforce, there's value clearly in both of these platforms, and it takes creative minds like him, development minds like Devhouse to kind of find these solutions for clients. And I think they will be standard within the next 5 years. We'll be a lot more comfortable entertaining those spaces.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll probably use this analogy a few times, but it's you've heard a picture is worth a thousand words. A video is worth a thousand pictures.
Yep.
VR is worth a thousand videos, right? So, and then progressively more so AR and other technologies as they get more advanced can become just as immersive and just as engaging as virtual reality has been in the past. So,
Yeah, really exciting time.
yeah, absolutely. So great. Well, we're going to wrap up the episode with that. Thank you for the time. Hope that you watch more episodes with us here, and we'll see you next time.